Welcome to the Rotary Club of Edina. I'm your host, Josh Sprague, proud president of the #1 club in the universe. I'd like to extend a special welcome to our club members, interested friends, and professionals tuning in to today's broadcast live from the Rotary TV studios in Edina, Minnesota. The coronavirus has been an historic moment for our club, and the social distancing and quarantine orders have been a real challenge for an organization that meets in person weekly and that is built on service and fellowship. But within just a few days of the outbreak in Minnesota, the Rotary Club of Edina had already switched over to virtual board meetings and was live streaming its regular weekly meeting programs. I'm also proud to say that our club stepped up immediately to donate time and treasure to address the epidemic. At its very first virtual board meeting, the Edina Rotary Foundation donated $5,000 to the Edina Public Schools COVID-19 relief program and approved $3,600 to Veep's food shelf and lunch programs. These funds were only part of the $66,000 in total grants approved to local community organizations, which I'll be highlighting in just a few minutes. Rotarians are people of action, and I know many of you are spending your time volunteering in the community to support seniors and other vulnerable people. And I want to thank you for your demonstrating through your actions our organizing principle of service above self. I also want to thank all of the members of both the club and foundation boards and all the officers for your flexibility, hard work, and dedication during these difficult and uncertain times. I acknowledge it's a bit different for all of us not being able to be together face to face at our weekly meetings, where we enjoy such great chemistry, camaraderie, and conversation. But in the interim, please keep reaching out to each other directly, over the phone and online, as we continue to carry out the business of our club, which is service to humanity. I look forward to seeing you again in person very soon. And now it's time for the invocation. This week's invocation comes again from fellow Rotarian Tom Cook, father of St. Stephen's Episcopal Church in Edina. Tom writes, "Let us give thanks to our Creator for this day, and may our Creator give comfort to those who lament not another day, patience to those who cry, just get me through the day, and hope to those who wonder, will we ever see a new day? May we, as Rotarians, be blessed with courage to confront the challenges this day will bring, compassion for those who are burdened by the loss of health and the suffering of loved ones, strength to make the best of every situation, and generosity to share something of ourselves today and every day in service and care for others. And when the world moves toward healing, may we be wiser, more humble, and grateful for the gift of each other. Amen." Tom, thank you so much for supplying these words week after week. Miss you and hope to see you again very soon. And now I'd like to invite Charles Sprague to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance and the four-way test. Charles?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Awesome. And the four-way test of the things we think, say, or do.
Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Thanks, Chuck. Okay. Now it's time for this week's announcements. I do have a special guest I'll be introducing shortly, but before that, let's talk about a few things. First, starting with anniversaries. The lifeblood of our organization is membership. We are fortunate at our club to have such a great diversity of members in terms of age, background, and professions. We are also fortunate to have so many long-term members who continue to volunteer and financially support the organization year after year. With that in mind, I'd like to recognize these Rotary anniversaries for March and April. starting with Mark Hegman, 35 years. George Lancaster, 32 years. Gene Morrison, our chair of the new Rotary Helping Hands program, 31 years. Congratulations, Gene. Harold Hansen, my old friend, 29 years. Miss Harold. Skip Thomas, Tom Winninger, and Andy Finsness, 26 years. Wow. Sandy Schley, my Rotary sponsor, 23 years. Paul Moody, past president, 21 years. Susan Stiles, our TRF chair, 19 years, many of those years at Minneapolis No. 9 Club. Myself, 12 years. Mark Jessen, 10 years. Kip Peterson, 8 years. Kaylin Eidsness, Susan Johnson, Jack Kennefek, and our president-elect Sam Thompson, 7 years. David Kleins and Don Hutchinson, 6 years. Dan Hennon and Ross Peterson, 5 years. Tom Cook, 4 years. Teresa Halverson, Scott Hawkins, and Mark Stagerberg, 3 years. Scott Blake and Toshi Metzger, 2 years. And finally, Eli Gruendijk and Nick Van Beek, 1 year. And also, another special anniversary today, actually this weekend, Paul Harris celebrates his birthday. He was born on April 19th, 1868 in Racine, Wisconsin. And so we're celebrating Paul's birthday posthumously. Congratulations to everyone, and thank you so much for your support of the Rotary Club of Edina. Now moving on to news from the Rotary Helping Hands program we mentioned earlier. Gene has this to say. Hey helpers, thank you for your willingness to be a helper as part of the Edina Rotary Helping Hands program. In the past month, many helpers have reached out to 53 senior Edina Rotarians and 6 honorary Rotarians to check in, see how they're doing during this challenging and stressful time during the COVID-19 epidemic, and inquire about their needs. The calls have been really welcomed, and we've been able to offer help when needed. We will continue to check in on many of them as the stay-at-home order has been extended May 4th. Because the pandemic and resulting stay-at-home orders impact everyone, we now plan to reach out to all Edina Rotarians over the next few weeks, with at least one check-in call to offer support and help. I'm grateful for your involvement and appreciate your desire to reach out a helping hand to our Edina Rotary family at this trying time. Of course, Fred Rogers said it best. In times of stress, the best thing we can do for each other is to listen with our ears and our hearts, and to be assured that our questions are just as important as the answers. Thank you again, Gene, for launching this program. And now in fundraising news, again, following up on last week, as we all may know, this year we had the most successful fundraiser ever in the 63-year history of the club. Part of the money raised goes towards our budgeted local and international projects, and part of the money goes towards local and international grants. I want to highlight again the $66,000 in local grants that were recommended and approved this year, and which include organizations like ACES, Better Futures, Boulder Options, Cornerstone, Edina Education Fund, Edina Give and Go, Fishing for Life, Gilda's Club, Hope Academy, the Muscular Dystrophy Association, Open Arms, brand new Rotary Club of Minnesota Veterans, Sheridan Story, and Veep. Our appreciation goes out to Chair Kelly Burnett and the local grants committee for vetting over 40 applications to get down to the final list of very deserving recipients. And remember, these grants were only possible through the generous donations of our members, and in particular, the over $100,000 in individual and corporate sponsors to the event. To everyone out there watching today, thank you for your meaningful and impactful gifts to the Edina Rotary Foundation, where all good things begin. And now I'd like to invite my colleague and fellow board member Susan Stiles to tell us a little bit about what's going on with the Rotary Foundation. Susan?
Hi, Josh.
Welcome.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
I made it.
Oh, I miss you so much.
I would like to give you a hug, but
That's
I guess
okay.
we're not supposed to do that.
We're the 6 feet apart, right?
I know, that's good. Good afternoon, fellow Rotarians. And I wanted to actually start today by giving our esteemed leader and Presidente here, Josh Sprague, a huge shout out. His leadership this year, his tenacity, his creativity, and really kind of what turned out to be a challenging year. And because he's so technologically savvy, way past me, here we are, Facebook Live. We didn't even skip a beat in our meetings. Look forward, however, to seeing you all again. It's working great, but it's not the same as being together.
So I'm trying
right?
to say that chemistry and camaraderie at the
I
meetings,
know.
it's something really special.
I know.
You know, when people join the club, they say, you know, I'm like, what was the thing that got you to join? It's like
Yeah.
that very first meeting,
Yeah.
the feeling of connection, hospitality, it's something that makes our club very unique.
Yeah. But this keeps us connected, so it's great.
Yeah. Well, I'm good. It's good to see you.
Yeah.
So, last week I reported a little bit about the district
Yep.
global DDF fund grants.
Sure.
They give $100,000.
Yep.
Looks like $75,000 to the Italian COVID-19 response fund.
Yep.
$25,000 to Rotary's disaster relief fund for
Yep.
badly needed medical equipment and supplies,
Yep.
such as full body thermal scanners,
Yep.
triage units, computer tablets, telemedicine software, and isolation stressors. So tell me a little bit about the disaster relief fund and how that plays into TRF season.
So I sent you all in a lengthy email yesterday, and it was intentional because I knew that I would be here today. And I know many of you read it, but I would guess that many of you maybe didn't. So there are 2 strategic typos within the body of that message.
Okay.
I challenge you all to go back, read the message, and find the typos. It's kind of like a Where's Waldo activity, all right?
You did a
And
treasure hunt in your email?
I did. And I know many of you did read it because, in fact, our current campaign is now up to almost $94,000.
Wow.
And we're at very close to a 50% participation rate.
Wow.
So our goal this year, and we have till June 30th to reach it, is $100,000. But more importantly, we really want that 100% participation. And it doesn't matter how much you give. If we got 100% participation, we would reach a significant milestone. That just doesn't happen. And we are one of the top giving clubs in the world, one of the top giving districts in the world as well.
Yeah, our per capita
Yeah.
giving is off the charts.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's an extremely generous club. So I thank you all for participating and so generously.
So this disaster relief fund,
Yep.
Rotary created this as a separate fund. But
Yep.
if I took a gift this year and pledged it towards that fund, would that count towards Paul Harris Fellow recognition?
It does, and
Okay.
it's very easy to do that. If you go on to my.rotary.org
Okay.
website, up on the top right-hand side, there's a donate button.
Yep.
It'll take you right to the page, and you can select, if you'd like, the annual fund, polio, combination, and also the disaster response fund.
Okay.
Any dollars that you donate to any of those causes all apply toward your Paul Harris recognition, which
Okay.
is $1,000 of cumulative giving for each Paul Harris Fellow. And I'll tell you, we've got a fair number right now that we really want to give those pins to. So as soon as we all get together again,
Yeah.
we're going to be busy at your podium.
I plan on writing a check to the disaster relief fund. I think it's
Okay,
it's
great.
a really an awesome fund. In addition to that, we're giving money to Shelter Box, which is
Yep.
in a little bit different part of disaster relief right now.
Sure.
But I think it's a great way for our members to get involved in disaster relief efforts,
Yeah.
not just specifically COVID, but all over the world for other disasters.
But right now, that disaster relief fund is specifically
Going to
helping
COVID-19.
COVID-19. That is what the mission is right now with those monies that are going there worldwide.
Okay, that's good.
So-
Something that just blows me away is we
Yeah.
have 40 or 50 major donors. That's donors
Yeah.
of $10,000 or more cumulative gifts to the Rotary Foundation.
Yep.
It's an absolutely amazing thing. And I remember when
It
I
is.
joined the club, it's almost like it pushes you
Yes.
to expand your philanthropy.
Yep.
Once you understand how the Rotary Foundation works and the genius
Sure.
of the foundation, and then you see all these people giving, I think it really brings you to the next
does.
level. I don't know, was that your experience? You've been in Rotary 19 years
Yeah,
now. So.
19 years. I can tell you that Edina Rotary numbers here are bigger
Off
than
the
what
charts.
I've seen. Yeah, they really are. They really, really are. It's not just the dollars. It's the time that all the members give to so many different activities. I'm just so impressed at how active this club is in the community. I just think it's really inspiring.
So in the
Yeah.
next couple months, your committee with David Kleins and some
Yep.
other folks from the club are going to be reaching out and trying to get those
Yes.
final gifts in. And normally we even surpassed that $100,000 mark, as I understand it.
We in all likelihood, we will.
Yep.
So I'm actually more focused on that 100% participation. I know we never had that in any of the other clubs I've been a member of. In fact, I think the highest would be closer to 60%.
Wow.
Yeah. So, if we can get close to that 100%, that would be a very significant milestone.
So just as an example, if I had been in the club a few years and I wanted to give $50,
Yep.
that would be counted as
Yes.
participation,
Yep.
correct? Mm-hmm. Any amount.
Yeah, and you can set it up as a monthly donation if it's easier to do, like $10 a month.
Oh,
You
that's
can
great.
set it up quarterly. You can have it go to a credit card. You can send a check to me. You can send a check direct. You can. I think the easiest way, honestly, is to just go into my.rotary.org and do your donation there. I
Online.
think the online is really slick, and it's easy to do. And plus, if you've never gone onto that website is just full of really great information.
It is. I
is,
agree.
yeah.
So anything else you want to mention our viewers, our members, before we move on to the next piece? Or
The only other item is if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me, to Josh, to David Kleins. David Kleins is really a wealth of knowledge when it comes to the Rotary Foundation. He's been
Yep.
awesome to work with, and I actually
shout out to David out
shout
there.
out, yeah,
Hope you're doing
and
well,
I
David.
rely on him a lot. So
I want to see him in the jockey uniform again. I might
know.
give more that way.
yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, well, thanks for having me here today.
Good to see
I
you.
appreciate it. You too.
Like I said, I miss
guys.
you, miss
I know.
everybody, and just thank you so much for your leadership.
Yep.
And I look forward to getting this
And
wrapped
you-
up
you
successfully
too.
in June.
Yep.
Yeah.
Take care.
All
Have a
right.
great day.
Thank you.
Yep.
Good to see you.
Yeah.
Okay, that wraps it up for the announcements. Now it's time to move on to today's program. Originally from Minnesota, Douglas Keillor is the founder and executive director of Juvenile Justice Advocates International. Doug is a human rights attorney currently living and working primarily in Mexico. He holds a Juris Doctor and Master of Arts in International Politics from American University. In 2012, Doug was awarded a Fulbright Garcia Robles Fellowship to research excessive juvenile detention in Mexico City. As a result, the Mexico City Superior Court invited him to help implement a pretrial release program. Due to the lack of organizations working on international juvenile justice reform, in 2013, Doug founded the U.S.-based 501c3 Juvenile Justice Advocates International. This organization is dedicated to ensuring kids are detained only as a last resort and for the shortest time possible. While it is estimated over 1 million children are behind bars across the globe, and that the damage this does to kids is internationally recognized as a critical human rights issue, the amount of time children spend in pretrial detention does not often receive much attention. Doug is working to change that. It's my honor and pleasure today to welcome to the Rotary TV set, Mr. Doug Keillor. Hey, Doug.
Hey, Josh.
Good to see you.
Good to see you, too. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm just so intrigued by this issue. It's something that we don't think about on a day-to-day basis, and so I'd love to hear a little bit more about the background of the organization
Yeah.
and how you got involved.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, first just to say thanks again for letting me be here today. A big part of why I started doing this work was because, you know, these kids don't have a voice.
Yeah.
And so just being able to share some of their stories and the work that we do is a big part of our mission. So I appreciate that. I actually started this work. I'm actually the founder of the organization, and started the work about 8 years ago. Received a Fulbright fellowship to go to Mexico and conduct research. So I'm an attorney here in the United States, and received this grant to go and conduct research in the prisons in Mexico. And so that's really where the work started in the genesis of our organization. What I saw at that point was that there were very few voices being raised on behalf of these kids who were spending sometimes months in detention before they would see a judge. Many of them, at the time, there were reports that somewhere around 3/4 of these kids are being beaten or abused by government officials, so police, even prosecutors. And they just had if they didn't have resources, they had no access to justice, really, and would end up staying in these detention facilities for very long periods of time without any hope of being able to get out and continue on with their lives. So
you were shocked.
yeah, it was shocking. It was it was difficult because one of the things I did that first year was I would sit down across the table from these kids and interview them and hear about their stories. And interview these mostly young men, mostly young boys. These are 15, 16-year-old teenage boys. And runs the whole gamut of kids who came from really difficult situations and were accused of really serious crimes, to a lot of kids who were accused of really petty crimes, and really comes out of the poverty that they're living in.
Yeah.
The fact is, nothing that happens to these kids in the justice system is making their situation any better.
Right.
Yeah.
So then you came back and you decided, hey, I need to take a little bit further step towards solving some of these problems.
Yeah, so the idea was when I saw that there just weren't very many voices being raised on behalf of these kids, and there were real structural problems within the justice system, came back to Minnesota and we founded the 501c3 Juvenile Justice Advocates International. And then actually me and my family moved back to Mexico, and so we've been living in Mexico for the last 7.5 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
A little bit warmer in the winters than here.
Yeah, it's a little rude awakening for our kids. We just came back a few weeks ago.
Oh, okay.
And so just,
So tell me about the family. You got...
So my wife, she's also from the Twin Cities area.
Okay.
And then our daughter's 11. She was born here, and then but has spent obviously most of her life in Mexico. She's 11. And then our son was born in Mexico, and he's 6.
So you've got dual language learners.
We have 2 bilingual little kids running around.
It's a great thing. I have 4 French language learners myself who went to Normandale French Immersion in Edina.
Oh, that's great.
Great experience, and it gives them a much broader perspective of the world. So
Right.
yeah.
No, and that's huge. And if they have the opportunity to go and spend some time overseas and really be immersed in the culture, there's just there's no replacement for that type of experience. It's so valuable.
So your JD was from here, and
My JD is actually from American University in Washington, D.C.
okay. I was a JD from Brooklyn Law School.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I ended up selling
right.
real estate. Go figure.
Yeah, well, you never know where you'll land, right? Yeah, so actually 10 years ago we moved out of Minnesota.
Yeah.
And brought our our 9-month-old daughter, and we moved to Washington D.C.
Wow.
for me to go to law school.
Okay.
And that's kind of where this journey kind of started for us.
So before we get to the criminal justice reform you're working on, what was the transition like to Mexico for the family?
Yeah, well, at the time our daughter was 3.5 years old, and it was, I think in general it was pretty good. It was a pretty good transition. We live in Mexico City.
Okay.
And it's a world-class city. It really is. I mean, there's definitely, we're not living the experience that a lot of people live in Mexico City who don't have resources.
It's dense.
So we were fortunate. It's very dense.
Yep.
For sure. And so just being able to walk everywhere, being able to walk to the grocery store and to the butcher and to school and to the office, and just having everything so close by, and access to world-class museums and restaurants, and
Okay.
a little advertisement for Mexico City here.
Yeah.
But so yeah, and the other thing is there's an amazing group of expats
Yeah.
in Mexico City. So we've met people from all over the world by living in Mexico City. We met people from the University of Minnesota who are there,
Oh.
from Cargill,
Okay.
from all of the big Fortune 500 companies who are there. And when you're an American overseas, you already have something in common with other people. So
Yeah.
So we're I think a lot of our support network and a lot of our friends and family and church family also has come from that expat community in Mexico City.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
So you get there, and then what was the first couple actions you started to take? Were you meeting with clients? Were you meeting with political leaders? Is it a dual track where you're trying to get political reform to the justice system as well as just help these children out?
Yeah, so the work really started by invitation from the Superior Court in Mexico City. And so I had produced some recommendations as part of my research, and part of all of those recommendations were focused around making sure that kids get before judges sooner, making sure that kids who can't afford bail are given another option besides having to pay bail so they can get out of detention. And so it all started, the work initially started as kind of advocacy, but directly with the detention centers, directly with the courts and with the judges.
So they were open to...
So they were open. I
Okay.
would say not everyone's totally open.
Yep.
But we had some real key kind of champions inside the system who are open to seeing change.
Is there, besides their heart for justice, is there motivation to avoid recidivism? Is it to stop these kids from coming through the system? Or is there attraction to your ideas?
So I think there's a couple things. I think one is there's some international standards that that the justice system in Mexico does look to. They look to those international standards.
Okay.
So you'd mentioned kind of the mission of our organization, which is to ensure that detention is used as a last resort and for the shortest period of time possible.
Yeah.
And that's language that actually comes right out of a UN Convention on Children's Rights.
Okay.
And so there's already a kind of an understanding that this is, an international best practice.
A human rights issue.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you start with that kind of common language. And what you see in Mexico, and I think in a lot of parts of Latin America, is that the laws themselves are, as they're on the books, are very good laws.
They're neutral on their face.
Yeah,
but-
they're good. They have very beneficial options. But there'll be a whole list of options of what you can do with a teenager when they get arrested, for example.
Mm-hmm.
The last option on the list will be detention. But they may not have any of those other options. May not exist in reality. They might not have community service programs. They might not have
Reform school.
yeah,
or
exactly,
Okay.
GPS monitoring. I mean, all of the whole range of options that may exist on paper don't exist in reality. So that's kind of where we focus a lot of our attention, is helping bring to reality what's already in the law.
Okay.
So it's not going necessarily to the political leaders to ask them to change the laws, although we do that sometimes too.
It's more of the practice.
It's more the practice. It's a lot of kind of assistance with implementing technical programs.
So we all know as lawyers, representation is the most important right. Do
Right.
these children have like guardian ad litems, or who's representing them?
No.
That seems to be a huge gap,
Yeah.
right?
So they do have legal representation. They do have a public defender system in Mexico.
Okay.
So they have kind of, at least nominally, they have a legal representation. One of the things that our organization started to do was we were starting to see these gaps that you'd mentioned. And we were seeing other gaps too, like we were seeing youth who were in detention for extended periods of time and didn't have really basic things, like they didn't have underwear, or they didn't have shampoo, or they were required to provide their own detergent to wash their own clothes. And
they're indigent, so they don't have any money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so we started providing some of those things with donations from people in Mexico.
Okay.
And then we started to discover that a lot of the reasons that they weren't receiving these items was because their parents didn't even have the money to visit them. So if their parents lived far away, or they couldn't afford a bus ticket to come and visit them, or they couldn't afford to leave work for a day and leave their other kids at home.
Poverty.
To go. Exactly. And so through that program of what we call, it's a family reunification program for youth who are in detention, we started getting into making sure that the families have access to their defense attorneys, to the child's defense attorneys. And then that's a way to keep the defense attorneys accountable as well.
Yeah.
We found that the parents are actually the best advocate for their kids if we can empower the parents. So that even as simple as having the public defender's phone number, and those, we can facilitate those connections between the public defender's office and the judges in some cases, and the parents and their kids. And so that's where a lot of our advocacy has taken place. We want to see the systems in Mexico be strengthened, and
Yeah.
so we don't represent kids directly in court cases.
Okay.
Rather, we try to equip both the parents and then the public defender's office to provide adequate representation.
Okay. So what are the, so you talked a little bit about the alternates to detention. To me, detention for a kid is like school. I mean, it can't
Right.
be a good environment. You're going to be learning how to do crime better, or maybe it's killing your self-esteem and you're getting labeled. There's a lot of stigma that comes out of that. So what are the other things that you recommend at this point?
No, and that's a really insightful point, and I refer back to a lot of times to work that has happened here in the United States that we pattern some of our work after. So, for example, there's a program here in Hennepin County, in Ramsey County, Dakota County. I think it's spreading across the whole state, called the Juvenile Detention Alternative Initiative, JDAI.
Yeah.
And JDAI is a national program, and in Hennepin County, the last time I looked at the statistics, they had reduced juvenile detention in Hennepin County by over 60%.
Wow.
And so a lot of it is we're locking up kids who just don't need to be there. And we're finding that of the vast majority of these kids, just by saying, come to your court hearings, and giving them kind of a summons, that they appear at their court hearings. And then if they appear at their court hearings, the judges are much more likely to give them probation. So the vast majority of these kids don't need
To show because they're showing they have a stake in the outcome.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And so for the kids who, and maybe plugging them into some sort of community service projects, most of this is petty thefts, robberies, property crimes, right?
What about counseling and kind of social services layered over?
Yep.
It's almost like they figured out you can't just give housing, you have to give housing with services. To me, it seems like you have to give justice with services.
Right. And so so one of the things we do is we help the court and we help the probation office implement what are called screening instruments. So the screening instruments will first help determine the kind of the risk that the youth has to being out when they get arrested.
Okay.
So we're seeing detention rates go down because of that, and these kids still appearing. And the second thing that some of these instruments can do is identify what needs they have. So what we don't want to see is we don't want the net to get wider. We don't want to see more kids being required to get services that they don't actually need.
Yeah.
And then they're going to have probation violations down the road and things like that. So we want to make sure just the kids who need services are getting them. And so that's a big part of our work as well, is again, not replacing what the government ought to be doing, but connecting social services with the court.
Yeah.
Connecting, like so many of these government agencies are very siloed. And so it's just kind of breaking down those barriers, getting the same people in the same room, talking about the same things at the same time, really starts to solve issues. And then our work is as a catalyst and as a trainer and things like that.
So how are you measuring success? You've been at this for a few years.
Yeah.
You've implemented some of these reforms. You're making these connections. How do you measure success with the program, and are there certain metrics that you're focusing on?
No, that's a great question. So all of the work that we do, we try to make sure that we have data behind it. That's kind of one of our core values as an organization. So our pilot project started almost 5 years ago now in the state of Chihuahua, which is on the border with New Mexico, Texas, and Mexico. And when we started our project in Chihuahua, about 50% of kids who were arrested were sent to pretrial detention. And of those youth, they would spend an average of 193 days in detention waiting to have their case resolved. Yeah. And of those 50% of the youth going to pretrial detention, spending 193 days in detention, 2/3 of them would be sentenced to probation. So the vast majority, the day that they get sentenced was the day they were released.
Except they miss school. They learn bad things,
Exactly.
stigma. I mean, a lot of things accumulate in 193 days.
Yeah, absolutely. So now, when we got our last set of data from Chihuahua, which was at the end, which was about 6 months ago, somewhere around 90% of youth who are arrested in Chihuahua State are not put into detention, and over 90% of those youth appear at their court hearings. And those court hearings are happening sooner, which is another thing that we work on. So now the average is down to just under 90 days on average.
Okay.
Which is still, if it's your child in detention, it still feels like too long. Every day counts. I mean, we all feel like that now, right? Every day that you're locked in is another day of like you mentioned, law school and mental health, trauma, and the risk of being abused while you're in detention. So we fight for every single day, but it's a huge decrease.
These are such, the times we're in give us such perspective. I'm thinking like 183 days for these kids, And then a friend of mine wrote an article about Anne Frank, 761 days in the attic.
Yeah.
And here we are complaining about 60 days, right?
Yep.
Puts it all in
Yep.
perspective. So for people out there that are interested in juvenile justice reform, how do they find you?
Yeah, so our website is jjadvocates.org, advocates with an S at the end.
Okay.
You can find us there. Our Facebook page is also Juvenile Justice Advocates International. I shared I've been commenting on the live stream, so you should be able to find us on Facebook.
We'll get you the video too. You can share it on your Facebook
That's
page.
right,
We
that's
love
right.
that.
And so we're there. And one of the things we're really highlighting right now is the work that we're doing in response to the COVID-19 pandemic as well.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about that.
So it's not an issue that's getting a lot of press, although a little bit more in the United States, with the spread of COVID-19 in facilities. So Rikers Island in New York had like 300 or 400 cases the last time I checked.
Wow.
Something like 300 or 400 New York City jail officials or correctional officials had been diagnosed with COVID-19. And so it's a big issue. We've been working since about the middle of March to try to raise the alarm to make sure that the courts are releasing kids who have underlying health issues or don't need to be in detention. And also to help the kids get either alternative ways to contact their parents, because what they're doing is locking the facilities down. So they're not allowing parental visits. And they're removing any non-essential staff. So if this facility has, say, a teacher that comes and teaches, not all of them do, but if they do, or if they have other staff that provides other activities, those staff are being removed from the facilities. So what we're seeing is kind of an isolation within an isolation. So
Wow.
kids being essentially on kind of solitary confinement right now. So we've been collecting donations in Mexico to provide, board games, books, notebooks. We're providing our organization's cell phones so that they can call their family members, especially in the facilities. There's facilities in Mexico where they don't have a phone line, or they don't have running water in the facility.
Wow.
So there's some really difficult situations right now, and everyone's in an emergency situation.
Yeah.
So you take sectors where they're already invisible, and they're even more invisible because everyone's attending to their own very real needs right now. So we're trying to continue to raise the alarm and kind of ramp up what we're able to do for these kids right now.
I really appreciate the work you're doing. Your rewards must all be internal, because you're not, once the clients are out, you've done your job. You don't get to see them. The parents may not be connected, so it has to be all coming from right here.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. The COVID-19 thing plays right into my next piece, so I'm glad you mentioned that. We've been doing a coronavirus quiz every week. Would you like to participate?
All right, let's try
You
this.
don't have to get every question right.
Okay.
But if you do, Chris Leskowski, our amazing videographer, will give you $1 million.
All right.
Okay.
Wow. I didn't notice his wallet was that big when I came in. but-
How about he's taking out the $1 million?
Oh.
Okay, it's a $1 bill. All right.
All right.
Well, we got to start
see.
somewhere. So here we go. Coronavirus quiz of the week. Question number 1. The devastating economic toll of the coronavirus pandemic grew this week as more people in the U.S. lost their jobs. In the past 3 weeks, about how many workers have filed for unemployment benefits? 750,000, 4 million, 17 million, or 28 million?
Ooh. Boy, 700,000 would be a really big number under normal circumstances, I think. But I know it's bigger than 700,000.
It's got to be in the mills, man.
Yeah.
Just so many
think it's-
people are.
I think it's maybe like the second, what was that, 17 million?
750, 4 million, 17 million, 28 million.
I'm going to say 17 million.
17 million. This guy got it right. Way to go.
Yeah.
All right. Question number 2. 17 million people with unemployment benefits.
Yeah.
Susan Stiles, our last guest, is a financial planner. Wow, that is devastating.
It's going to reach probably 16%.
It's going to reach 16%. Okay, well, good things to look forward to. Let's move along. They're still going to need housing. I'm telling you, it's a necessity. All right, number 2. After reporting a relatively low rate of coronavirus infections without imposing the kind of stringent measures used by other nations, which country declared a state of emergency this week in 7 prefectures, 7 counties? Japan, Philippines, Singapore, or South Korea?
Oh, wow.
So it's a country who kind of took it easy first, and now they're in a full state of emergency.
When you read the question, I thought of Sweden, right? Because isn't Sweden like totally chilling out about this?
I would like to hear some statistics. I know that that didn't work well in Britain, but I don't know that one.
We're going to say Japan.
Japan.
All right.
It is. They sat back. You know, it's interesting. I read some articles on the 1918 flu pandemic and which countries and which cities recovered the fastest. It was always the ones that acted to quarantine the swiftest. Yes. So it was a big economic hit, you know, in the short term, but in the long term, they recovered all of their employment and everything else. So Minnesota has the lowest infection rate in the nation. I'm thinking good things for Minnesota. Another good reason to be here. And the weather. It's so awesome. Don't you love the weather in Minnesota? All right. Question number 3. A state Supreme Court reversed the governor's order to delay an election in which state? Alaska, Kansas, Wisconsin, or Wyoming?
I think did Alaska have an election? One of them had an election. But the big one in the news was Wisconsin, right?
Wisconsin. Yes, that's the one. The Supreme Court reversed the governor's order to delay an election, so they had to go forward with it. They waited a long time to vote. Another thing we take for granted. You know, you go in here in Edina, you go in and you're in and out in 2 minutes. They're waiting for 4 or 5 hours. It's crazy. Okay, question number 4. Partly because of fears of the spread of the coronavirus, a ceasefire in the war in Yemen was announced by which country? Russia, Saudi Arabia, Syria, or Turkey?
Oh, that's a tough one.
It is.
Wow. You went deep in your
I
news feed
reached
for that one.
deep down into my news feed for that one. I mean, Juvenile Justice International.
That's right. We should. Now you're putting me on the spot. Boy, oh boy. Let's go with Turkey.
Saudi Arabia.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Saudi Arabia and Yemen, they've been fighting for a long time, those two. But I guess they're calling it off for now. Another good thing from the virus. Okay, question number 5. Which tech executive promised to donate $1 billion to relief programs related to the coronavirus? Was it Jack Dorsey, Sheryl Sandberg, Meg Whitman, or Mark Zuckerberg?
Boy. I should know this one, right?
I got it wrong when I guessed. It could happen.
Well, you'd guess like Mark Zuckerberg is what you'd guess.
He's got
right?
all the money. Why wouldn't he be given $1 billion?
I'm going to say Sheryl Sandberg.
Jack Dorsey from Twitter, actually. Yeah.
Oh.
But I agree with you. Zuckerberg should be doing what Microsoft, Bill Gates does. I mean, the guy's given billions and billions to polio relief.
Right.
But Jack Dorsey from Twitter, yeah. Leave it to the Twitter people. I think the president is good for Twitter stock right now. That's probably why. He's doing well.
Well, we're all on Facebook and Twitter all the day now, right?
That's true. All right, number 6. In what is thought to be the first such infection of its kind, an animal at the Bronx Zoo tested positive for the coronavirus. What type of animal was it? Chimpanzee, giraffe, tiger, or zebra?
Yeah, my kids, I think, were real upset when they heard the news on that one. It was the tiger, right?
It was a tiger. The Tiger King would be very upset. Tiger King in prison, if you're hearing this news, I'm so sorry for you. Yes, it was a tiger.
Maybe he could have warned us. Maybe he knew.
He could have warned us, or maybe just gone online and wore his great outfit and just, lamented about it. That would have been worth it. Okay, and the last question. The Easter Bunny and the Tooth Fairy were designated as essential workers during the pandemic by which world leader? Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern of New Zealand, Chancellor Angela Merkel of Germany, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau of Canada, or President Donald Trump?
That doesn't sound like a very German thing to do. I don't think it was Angela Merkel. This might be a
Today
process of
we
elimination.
say the Easter Bunny and Tooth Fairy are essential work. No, it doesn't sound right.
No. And didn't Justin Trudeau's, his wife was diagnosed with coronavirus, right?
So he wouldn't want the Easter Bunny around either.
Right. I don't know. So what does that, I don't know what that leaves?
It leaves you Trump or the New Zealand Prime Minister.
Well, I'm going to go with the New Zealand Prime Minister.
The New Zealand Prime
I'm
Minister.
going to stay out of politics here.
It's true.
in the US.
They're so laid back in the Pacific. I mean, they give this exclusion for the Easter Bunny and the Tooth Fairy? Jeez.
Yeah.
Something else.
That's not what we told our kids. My daughter lost a tooth and was, sorry, the tooth fairies.
You saved $5.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. Well, you did well, actually. Congratulations. You didn't
Yeah.
win the $1 million, but he will give you $1. I also have another special thing for you, and it goes something like this. Rotary is a global network of 1.2 million neighbors, friends, leaders, and problem solvers who see a world where people unite and take action to create lasting change. From literacy and peace to water and health, we are always working to better our world, and we stay committed to the end. In honor of your presentation today, we will make a donation to Rotary's official disaster relief partner, Shelterbox, which provides emergency shelter to families devastated by natural disaster and conflict around the world.
That's awesome.
And $1.
All right. Tax
So-
deductible.
Thank you so much
No,
for
thank
being
you.
flexible and being with us. And I just appreciate hearing your story, and I hope you'll come back in the future.
Awesome. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Good to see you.
Yeah, you too.
Another great program. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. I got a few news about upcoming events I wanted to share with you quickly. So next week, we're going to have an online meeting, but we're going to do a Zoom meeting. We're going to send out the invite this week in the Barker and in your email. And once everyone's logged in at 12:35, we'll kick it off by a quick Zoom tutorial by Bridget Hallstrom, who is our incoming membership chair. She's going to answer any questions you have about the Zoom platform and how to use the Zoom software. Then for the program that day, former Rotary Club of Edina president and current Minneapolis University Rotary Club member Ellen Kennedy will be presenting on the state of hate as she runs down the current anti-Semitism and racism trends in America and beyond. It's going to be a very interesting program. Then the next week on April 30th, we will return to the Facebook Live format as we host our virtual Vocational Ethics Day, featuring a lively discussion between ethics speaker John Rubishko and moderator and Eden Prairie AM President John Crudelli, as they look back on John Rubishko's federal mortgage fraud and the lessons he learned from that experience. That'll be a great day, and we'll take questions from the Facebook audience if you throw them into the stream. So again, that's April 30th. Then a couple weeks later, on May 14th, we'll have John Kaufman from H2 Open Doors, and he'll be flying in from California to talk about some of his recent projects with the SunSpring solar and wind-powered water purification system, including a recent installation at the Escuintla National Hospital in Guatemala. We visited that hospital on our Guatemala service trip in April of 2019, and the doctors Posadas and Menendez came and visited us in the fall of 2019. Finally, on May 27th, we'll have our vocational off-site meeting at the Discovery Nexus Center, Tech Incubator, and Collaboration Center at the University of Minnesota, followed the next night by tours at the Walker Art Center, both of the sculpture gardens and we hope inside at the private collection. So we're going to come back strong in May. I know all of you will be there. I'm very excited to see you. As we close today's meeting, I'd like to share a quote from Cornel West, American philosopher, political activist, social critic, author, public intellectual, and professor of the practice of public philosophy at the Harvard Department of African American Studies. West said, "Remember that justice is what love looks like in public." I think today's program reminds us that juveniles in the criminal system are vulnerable and need more mentoring, rehabilitation, and support for their early life trauma. and less punitive measures and incarceration. We all have a role to play in supporting the very least among us. As you go about your week, remember that together we see a world where people unite and take action to create lasting change across the globe, in our communities, and in ourselves, as Rotary pursues its mission to connect the world in meaningful ways. Thank you again, everyone, for tuning in to this week's broadcast of Rotary TV. Be safe, be well, and have a great week. Meeting adjourned.